This podcast is brought to you by WRFL, Radio Free Lexington. Find us online at wrfl.fm. Catch us on your FM radio while you're in Central Kentucky at 88.1 FM all the way to the left. Thank you for listening, and please be sure to subscribe.
Hi, welcome to From the Woods, Kentucky. I'm Renee Williams, and I'm here with my co-host, Lhotka. Today in studio, we have Dr. Jeff Stringer. Dr. Stringer is a professor and chair of the UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. Prior to his role as the department chair, he was an extension professor of hardwood silviculture and forest operations. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio today talking about UK's Robinson Forest.
Glad to be here.
So tell us, what is Robinson Forest?
So Robinson Forest is 15,000 acres. It's composed of a 10,000 acre, what we call main block, so a contiguous 10,000 acre property, and the other 5,000 acres are in sorted properties around it. Mm-hmm. But it is a forest. It's a research, demonstration, teaching forest. The University of Kentucky manages it, and it's there for the purpose of helping the Commonwealth provide solutions to forestry issues that we have for teaching youth, and we'll talk about some of that kind of thing, as well as university courses there, and obviously doing research and continuing education work as well.
So where is Robinson Forest located?
Robinson Forest is located in the heart of eastern Kentucky coalfields. It's located between a little east of a line between Jackson and Hazard. And it actually exists in Breathitt, not in Perry counties. And so it's in a middle of an area that there's been extensive surface mining around it. It has not been the main block, the 10,000 acre main block of Robinson Forest has not been mined, but it is surrounded by areas that have been. And that makes it fairly unique in that part of the country.
So there has to be a history behind Robinson Forest. So can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, there's a long history behind Robinson Forest and how UK, came to UK. So that region of eastern Kentucky was very much like a lot of the central and southern Appalachians. So there was a long history there of people living on the land that necessarily didn't own the land. There was every third hollow, had a house in it where there was subsistence farming going on, that kind of thing. And with the advent of railroads, with steam locomotives and railroads, that provided a tool, if you will, to start to extract timber from the Appalachians in general, right, that had typically been not accessible to large-scale logging. And so when that came along, there was a company called Mobley and Robinson Lumber Company that set up a sawmill right outside of Jackson, Kentucky, and started buying properties to harvest the timber from. And some of those properties are what is now Robinson Forest, that 15,000 acres. So they purchased the property, they went in, they logged it very extensively. They put railroad tracks in as far as they could up every creek channel that there was, and they logged it out. And and so this was done in the teens, so before 1920, and it got wrapped up in the early 20s. And Mr. Robinson then provided UK with this land in trust, for the benefit of the people of eastern Kentucky and to demonstrate reforestation. He also spent the next year getting the coal rights to it, next 10 years actually getting the coal rights to it, so that somebody couldn't mine it out from underneath us, all right? Mm-hmm. So we've had the property since 1923. That was before there was a Department of Forestry at the university, but the College of Ag tended that. We had a forester that was there. We had staff that was there, all that kind of thing. And they actually did forest management work, took care of the place, made sure the boundaries were marked and were regulated, if you will, put out forest fires, all those kind of things through the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. There was also an agricultural research station, education station that was established as a part of this. Now it's not right at Robinson Forest; it's 15 or so miles away, and at that time Agriculture, of course, was a big thing like it is now, and there was a lot of agricultural work done in the area out of there. But the forest did regenerate from all the cutting that was done. It did that naturally, and it continued to grow. And then the Department of Forestry was formed in 1972, and at that point in time, the Department of Forestry here started doing active work there and research. So it does have a long history, and we're very lucky to have that. And have been protecting it and helping manage it and since we acquired it in 1923.
Okay. So can you tell us what some of the activities are that are being done there right now?
Yeah, there's a wide range of activities and things that go on at Robinson Forest. So, like I said before, it's a teaching, research, and demonstration forest. We have lots of demonstrations there. Good sustainable forest management and how that's done, and we have different little small parts of the forest where we have demonstration plots put in so people can come and see good forest management and how that works. Those have been highly successful, so we've done a lot of continuing education there for the general public, for woodland owners, for example. We do education there it's a regional training site for our Kentucky Master Logger program. So all logging operations in Kentucky are required to have a Kentucky Master Logger on site and in charge of that operation. That requires education, and we use Robinson Forest as a training site for that. That's just an example of some of the continuing education stuff that's done through our forestry extension. So we do a lot of those kind of things. We have classes of students that come there that are K through 12 in the local area that go there and where classes are conducted for them. And then, of course, we have university classes there. Not only the forestry department, Forestry and Natural Resource Department, which has our forestry students, have classes there and attend there. But we also we have English classes going there. We've got geology classes going there and archaeology classes going there. So it's used a lot for both for continuing education, as described earlier, as well as as primary, secondary, and post-secondary education. And of course, a big thing that we do there is research. And the research ranges widely from basic ecological research on forest systems. And the nice thing about Robinson Forest, because while it was disturbed, it was logged very heavily, so it's all second growth. It has regenerated, not been disturbed much since then, other than the little bit of work that we do there. So it's a great place to study things from an ecological standpoint. A lot of wildlife research goes on there, and that includes game and non-game. We did a lot of the elk reintroduction that was done in eastern Kentucky was centered right around Robinson Forest. In some cases, our outlying tracts that have been surface mined over time. And so there's a lot of elk research goes on there. Bear research has been done there, and a lot of non-game work. So work on reptiles and salamanders and birds that are the non-game birds. So it provides an opportunity to do all those things. We do a lot of hydrology work there, working with water quality issues, and it's neat to be able to have seen that work go on since 1972, because from our data, so we have data that has come, hydrologic data, so water quality data that has come from there since 1972. That's long-term data, highly valuable, and we can see the effect of the Clean Air Act, for example, and the reduction in sulfur emissions and its effect on water quality, and a positive effect in that case. And so we do a lot of hydrology work there. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the major research projects that have gone on. And then we do basic forest management research there, how to grow trees, make them more healthy, those kind of things. So that's ongoing as well. Entomologists work there. We have an insect that's affecting eastern hemlock throughout southeastern Kentucky right now. It's at a lull right now because we've had a couple hard, cold winters, but it is around killing hemlock, and we've got entomologists from the entomology department doing research work in that. So the type of research there, archaeological research, geological research. So the research there spans a really broad spectrum of different topics. And our department is fully engaged in that, but the college is. We have universities outside of Kentucky, in Kentucky and outside of Kentucky doing research there. So it's used quite a bit for its research value.
So what are the major research projects that are going on right now?
Well, there's two. So we'll focus on two. There are a number of them, and I don't want to slight anybody because they're all important. But two major areas right now of active and ongoing research. I mentioned hydrology and how important that was, and we have long-term hydrologic data coming from there, which is highly valuable in itself. But we've also done work there, very active work in hydrology. For example, we put together from 2004 through really to the present, because this research, once you start some of this research, it goes on for a long time. But starting in 2004 and actively going through about 2012, 2014, we had what we call the Streamside Management Zone project. That's a big bunch of words, but what we did is we put together, several researchers here put together a project where we wanted to see the ways that we were logging, doing timber harvesting, if the ways that we put in place to help protect water quality, those are called best management practices, whether they were really effective in helping water quality and protect water quality when we did a timber harvest. The Streamside Management Zone, where that name comes from, their project is, Streamside Management Zone is an area right next to a stream where you provide special protection for that area when you're harvesting. You're leaving a certain amount of trees of a certain width, all those kind of things. And so this study was put together to determine what those correct practices were. Okay, we were testing out what Kentucky currently has mandated in state law for loggers to do, whether that was good or not, and could it be improved, and how would that be improved? The Kentucky has a governor-appointed Forestry Best Management Practices Board that reviews these practices to make sure that what we have on the books and requiring loggers to do are up to speed, that as new science is developed, that we put it to work and change the laws and those kind of things. So this project was put in to deal specifically with helping us determine whether we're protecting water quality like we need to be when we're doing timber harvesting. So that study was fairly big for Robinson Forest, but it involved 6 different areas where we imposed different types of protections to streams when we harvested it. And so we monitored water quality, the benthic macroinvertebrates, so that's small insects living underneath rocks that are indicators of stream health. We monitored those, for example, monitored amount of sediment that was in the stream, all those kind of things. We looked at salamander populations and bird population, all those kind of things relative to the protection that these streamside management zones afford. So we did that work, and that was a major project, went on for a long. Those kind of projects are very expensive, very long term, very difficult to put in and monitor. But Robinson Forest is a great place to do it. We were able to do that, set that up and run, and the results of that were reviewed by the governor's appointed Forestry B&P board, and changes were made in the law. And so what we did is we were able to improve and provide more efficiency and effectiveness of the practices that loggers are required to use throughout Kentucky to protect the water quality when they harvest. So Robinson Forest in that one particular study has statewide significance, not just an Eastern Kentucky thing, but it's used statewide, to help protect the waters of the Commonwealth. So that was a big research effort. And there was a number of smaller studies that went along with that as well. So hydrology work like that is important for the Commonwealth, and Robinson Forest is uniquely suited to do that kind of work. I said that we have been looking at water quality since 1972. When you go so the nice thing about that is you have these long-term data sets, and then that's very useful when you do a project like I just described. Okay. So that's one area that there's currently active research going on. The other, and I mentioned there were 2, and the other one is dealing with threatened endangered species. So we all know that there are a number of species out there that are under duress. They get federally listed as threatened or endangered, which means they have special protection. The most notable one there was the bald eagle, for example. It was on the threatened endangered species list. It's now been taken off. It still afforded the same protections under a different law, but it's one that we all can think of as a species that we're having problems with, and everybody knows about. And everybody knows that you cannot harass or kill a bald eagle, right? So we have a number of threatened endangered species in Kentucky. Last I checked, somewhere in the number of about 40. Okay,
wow.
A lot of them plants and that, but some of them are in the water, of course. And we have the Kentucky arrow darter, very small fish, lives in the streams and headwater streams or small streams in eastern Kentucky. We have a bunch of them at Robinson Forest. They're now federally protected, But the species that we've really been dealing with, or species group that we've been dealing with, is bats. We have a number of bat species that hibernate in caves. That have been, there has been a disease spreading, fungal disease spreading throughout the caves in North America, in the U.S., that's killing off some bat species that hibernate in caves to a very alarming degree. And a number of those species have been put on either as listed as either threatened or endangered by the federal government, need special protection. Now, it just so happens there are several of these species of bats that spend the summertime in the forest. So they're forest-dwelling bats, and they give birth. The females go find a tree. Sometimes they do that in aggregate. It means there'll be a bunch of them, female bats in a tree. You can't see them if you walk by the tree. They're not hanging off the branches. They're in a hole in the tree. They're under the bark flakes, plates, things like that. But they're in the forest, and so they give birth there. And then they they carry the young around when they fly, and they feed the young and all those kind of. They're a mammal, right? So they have the babies, and then during the summertime, the babies get big enough, right, that they can start flying themselves, and they stay in the forest until the fall, and then they migrate back, fly back to the caves, and hibernate in the wintertime. And they can be in a cave and fly. I mean, the biologists, our wildlife researchers that deal with these things, I mean, they'll tell you they'll fly 100, 200, 300 miles. So they may be in Mammoth Cave, for example, over the winter, but they might wind up at eastern Kentucky in the forest. So what happens is you've got a threatened endangered species now that only comes out at night, right? Can't see them during the daytime, that are dwelling in the forest, and as part of forest management, you got to be concerned about that.
Right.
Okay, so we have one of the foremost bat researchers in North America. It happens to be on staff here. One of our professors, Mike Lackey, and he and I and several others have undertaken research to determine if we can actually improve the habitat in the woods for the forest-dwelling bats. Indiana bats example, northern long-eared bats, another example of a species that in eastern Kentucky that just became listed as threatened this last year.
You've been listening to From the Woods, Kentucky with co-hosts Renee and Laura. We'll be right back after this short break.
Okay, before we get back to our main segment, we're going to listen to our wildlife sounds from the forest. And for those of you that might be new listeners to our show, each week we're going to have a brief sound bite for a wildlife sounds from the forest. And Dr. Matt Springer will introduce that sound. And then later in the show, we'll hear kind of his explanation of what the animal is and a full description of what that sound is. So let's listen to Dr. Springer.
Welcome to Wildlife Sounds from the Forest. This week we have a guest with us. Today we have Lori Thomas, Extension Forester within the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources, and she's going to tell us all about this sound that you hear now.
Hi, I'm Lori Thomas here at the UK Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. We've got 3 sounds that you're going to hear, and these sounds would be associated with the program that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. That's Project Feeder Watch. Here's the first one. All right, now here's the second one. And here's the third one. Stay tuned, and towards the end of our program, you'll get to find out what sounds came from which bird, which all of the birds that you heard are very common feeder birds. So you might get to see and hear those birds, but stay tuned with us so that you can find out which bird was which.
Welcome back to From the Woods, Kentucky. Let's get back to our interview.
So we've undertaken a project to determine if we can cut timber in a way that can actually improve bat habitat. And the way you do that is provide areas so they can forage on the fly, open areas in the forest, so they can fly around and move and very effectively feed. Okay, while at the same time protecting areas where they are dwelling in the trees at night and during the daytime and rearing the pups and those kind of things. So we've got that study. There's a fairly new study. It's ongoing now. The harvest is put in, and this is done not only at Robinson Forest. We did it at several other locations, down at one of the state forests down by Pineville, and on private industry land. Actually is involved in this as well, that's north of Robinson Forest. So we have different sites, Robinson Forest being one of them, and we're monitoring the bats and echolocating them, that they're locating them and inventorying them by the sounds that they make at night. We're netting them and things like that. So we've got graduate students and professors involved in all that. And the whole idea there is to see if we can actually improve and help the situation with these bats that we know are under duress. Not for many, they're not under duress from what we're doing in the woods or from timber harvesting. They're under duress because we've got disease in the caves. But we want to do everything we can to help them. And so Robinson Forest provides a really, really good opportunity to be able to use Robinson Forest to help address these kind of issues. So that's two examples. I know I spent some time on it, but they are big studies. And the results of that, just like the hydrology study with the timber harvesting water quality, the bat study, that kind of research data we're going to get there is going to be used not just in Kentucky, but for everybody, for throughout the range of these bat species, which is through a large part of the hardwood forest in the eastern U.S. So it's highly valuable research to do, which has implications for important species, well beyond the boundaries of Kentucky.
So one thing you've mentioned wildlife, and you've also mentioned trees. And so how many different species is at Robinson Forest? Do you know, as far as trees go and wildlife goes? I'm sure there's an abundance of all of it.
Oh, there's abundant, yeah. And so, Kentucky is blessed with a diversity of wildlife and tree species and plant species in general, right? And I would say the same thing of species in the streams.
Right.
We have a lot of mussels. We have a lot of little fish, all of that. So we're blessed with a great degree of diversity. And so from the standpoint of when you think of the forest, while we have over 100 of tree species in Kentucky, you've easily, of large trees that get big, you easily got 40 or 50 or 60 at Robinson Forest. Wildlife's the same way. I don't know that we know all the wildlife that's at Robinson Forest, but you literally have hundreds of species. Of plants. You got hundreds of species of animals, everything from the ones you can see like the deer and the turkey and all that. We have bear now, all those kind of things, to flying squirrels, which are nocturnal, which, you're lucky if you see one out in the daytime, and things like the UK wildcat, right? The bobcats there. And so a wide variety of species and salamanders and snakes and all those kind of things. So, And that provides good opportunities then for teaching and research and demonstration of how to, practice can be done to improve wildlife, not just for bats, but for other things as well.
Okay, so you've been talking a lot about the research going on, the species that are there. It sounds like it's a very unique place. Can you tell us, why it's so important and what makes it so unique there?
It is unique, and one of the things that makes it unique is, one, it's been protected. We've protected it. We do active work there for all the reasons that I've mentioned, and it's been regrowing. So we, Mr. Robinson gave it to us to UK for the demonstration of reforestation. That certainly occurred. We do that, But what makes it really unique is probably its size. So, and maybe its location. So it's located in what we call the Cumberland Plateau. So that region is like the western foothills of the Appalachians. And so that area, our eastern coalfield area, it's not really in mountains. It's in what we call a plateau. It's highly dissected. It's real hilly, okay? But it's not mountains per se that are upthrust, like the Appalachians are, or the Rocky Mountains. Now, this area is an important area. It extends from West Virginia all the way down in Alabama, so it's a big area. And Robinson Forest is located right in the middle of the interior rugged section of that region. So information that comes out of there, from research or whatever it is applicable directly to a large part of that Cumberland Plateau region. Now, it's also applicable to a lot of other areas as well. Okay, so, and the fact that 10,000 acre main block that we've protected, hasn't been surface mined, those kind of things, it contains two 4,000 plus watersheds in it. And we've been continually monitoring the water quality coming out of there and the amount of water, all those kind of things. Mentioned that earlier. But that's fairly unique because that size, those two 4,000 acre watersheds represent the largest watersheds that have not been disturbed. It doesn't have a city in it, it doesn't have a bunch of roads in it, doesn't have a little town in it, hasn't been surface mined. The largest ones of those in that Cumberland Plateau. So it makes it very valuable for the data that comes out. US EPA, for example, is very aware of Robinson Forest, right? We have a project, we just got money where we can actually be able to, while we monitor water quality now we have the money and we're going to be able to transmit that data in real time so that people have access to it, both back here, researchers back here at University of Kentucky, as well as others. So the uniqueness of it is part of its size. And the fact that we've been able to manage and control what's gone on there, right? Yeah. And so that does make it unique. The forests there are common from the standpoint of we have the same species that the properties around it have, that private landowners have, not only in eastern Kentucky, but in western Kentucky as well. So from that standpoint, it's good because it's not like it's so unique that whatever you do there doesn't have applicability. The great value to it is that it does have whatever we do there, whatever we learn from it, ecologically, hydrologically, whatever it is, practice from the standpoint of practice, whatever we learn there can be applied to quite a broad area. So its uniqueness is in size and the fact that we protect it, but it's also the fact that it has forest types, for example, that are common, like white oak and yellow poplar, tulip poplar, state tree. All those species are present like they are everywhere else. So that makes it valuable from that perspective. If it was so unique that it could be so unique that it might have species growing there that doesn't grow anywhere else, well, that's great from a biological standpoint, but it doesn't necessarily help us develop solutions to the problems that we have in the state.
Okay. So what would be kind of the one takeaway item that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one takeaway item. Well, I think it would roll back to the fact that Robinson Forest is highly valued for the information that we can get from it. It's highly valued as a place, okay, that we need to continue to protect and just as importantly, use. We want to be able to use it to answer questions and do things, manage it correctly for those purposes. And the kind of take-home message is it is an important resource. And the message is not just for Breathitt, Knott, and Perry counties, and not just for a part of eastern Kentucky, but it's important for the entire Commonwealth. And I would say it's important for the forest systems at large in the eastern U.S., the hardwood oak hickory forests of the eastern U.S., it's important for them as well. So it's a very small property, 10,000 acres, that has implications, and use for and implications to help, millions of acres in the eastern United States.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Stringer, for joining us today. We appreciate having you on.
Enjoyed being here.
So if you'd like more information on items listed today or that we've talked about, please visit our website at www.fromthewoodsky.org. So stay tuned now for Wildlife Sounds from the Forest.
Welcome to Wildlife Sounds from the Forest. This week we have a guest with us to talk about the sound we heard earlier. Today we have Lori Thomas, Extension Forester within the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources, and she's going to tell us all about this sound that you hear now.
Here's the first one.
Now, Lori, tell us, what is that sound?
All right, isn't it great? Very chatty. That's the Carolina chickadee, one of our small seed-eating birds, very common to come to bird feeders. There's also a black-capped chickadee, which that's how you tell them. I mean, they have black caps. Even the Carolina ones do. But they're a small seed eater, and so they're the ones that'll come to and from your feeder. They grab a seed and take off and go crack it open in some place of cover and then come back. So they're a very common one that you'll see at your feeders.
Okay, great. Well, let's play that second sound. Okay, now what was that one?
I love that one. Okay, that's our tufted titmouse, and it's called tufted because it's a little crest on the top of his head, kind of like what you think of a cardinal, but these are a little gray bird and this kind of dapper looking, a very pretty little bird with the little crest and the big round, dark eyes. Again, a wonderful bird to see at your bird feeder. You'll see the chickadee and the titmouse quite often, and they are the chatty Cathy's out there. They're going to be the ones that you hear even through your glass. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Yes, so they're very chatty out there.
All right, now let's play that third sound. Okay, now what was that?
Okay, well, you notice not quite as loud.
Right.
And this is the Downy Woodpecker. Another common bird that you will have if you put out, especially if you put out suet feeders. Those tend to attract woodpeckers quite a bit. A very, very nice, great bird to see. It's one of our ladderback woodpeckers. Small, this is the smallest one that we'll see around Kentucky. And to tell the male from the male has the red stripes on his head and the female doesn't.
Okay, great. All right, well, now you're here to talk about Project Feeder Watch today, so let's get started talking about that. What is Project Feeder Watch?
All right, well, it's I love this program. I participate in it myself, and so does my family. But Project Feeder Watch is it's a winter-long bird survey of our birds that visit bird feeders. So bird feeders that could be in your backyard, at a nature center, or in a community area. It is a program that is it's run and taken care of by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it's citizen science. Kind of at its best, actually, you know. Yeah. So the Cornell Lab of Ornithology with Project Feeder Watch is counting on you as the citizen to be keeping track of the birds that have visited your bird feeders and then turning in that data to them. So it's citizen science at its best, I think. It starts November 10th, 2018, and it runs all the way through April 5th, 2019. So there's a lot of time to get involved in it. You want to go ahead, if you're interested, and go ahead and sign up soon, because if you've never participated, you're going to get a brand new kit with detailed information, everything you need to know how to do, what kind of bird feeders to put out, where you should put them, and what kind of seed you should put in, and how you collect data for the Project Feeder Watch program.
So why is Project Feeder Watch important?
Well, Project Feeder Watch is a way for scientists tell us what birds are in which areas. I mean, this is this is for North America. This isn't just Kentucky or anything. So this is a large area where scientists are able to see that crucial information about which populations, which birds are we having in their winter ranges, if those winter ranges are expanding or contracting, and collecting all kinds of information that scientists just can't do. They rely on the public to help them do that.
So where and I guess how is this data used?
Well, they use it in long-term trends in bird distribution and abundance. That's why they collect numbers and abundance and whatnot. And it helps them look at if there's expansions and contractions in winter ranges of feeder birds. It's good to know what's going on in our communities and throughout the country. Also, it helps detect and keep track of when there are diseases in bird populations, because that's one of the questions as you're tallying your birds. You're looking at them closely and you're seeing if there seems to be kind of any indication of a problem. So that way they're keeping track of if there's diseases or whatnot. And this information is used by scientists across the world, and it's reported in things like the National Academy of Sciences, the Condor. It's used in national magazines, Audubon, Bird Digest, and whatnot.
So how long have they been going on? What's the history of Project Feeder Watch?
Project Feeder Watch actually began in Ontario as Ontario Bird Feeder Survey in 1976. But they realized after doing it for a couple of years, we need to be including more than just Canada. We want all of North America. So they teamed up with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology here it's actually in New York, and put together a North American Feeder Watch program, Project Feeder Watch. And that was started in the winter of 1987 to 1988. That's when Project Feeder Watch officially started. And initially there were 4,000 people enrolled, Project Feeder Watchers. And today there's over 20,000 people enrolled in this program. And I'm one of it. I enjoy it very much.
So where should you put a bird feeder if you wanted to participate in this project?
Feeder placement's important, and I will say if you sign up and they send you the kit, they're going to detail all of this information for you. You can also just go to the Cornell Project Feeder Watch, and all of this information is up there on the web for you as well if you want to not receive a bunch of paper stuff. But placing feeder placement is important. So this is you're watching the birds out your window from November to April. That's the time when you generally want to feed birds. You don't want to leave seed out necessarily during the summer months and whatnot, because there's plenty of natural food sources available for them. But you want to place your feeder someplace where in your yard, first of all, you can see it from your window. If you're going to participate, you got to be able to count the birds and see them. You don't want it too far away. But you do want to also have it near some cover, natural cover for those birds, because not all birds will sit at that feeder and feed. Some birds are going to actually, such as our chickadee and our titmouse, are kind of smaller seed-eating birds. They're going to collect a seed and then they're going to take it back to some place of shelter where they can then crack that, usually a black-wheeled sunflower seed. That's a really good source of food for birds, but they got to be able to crack it open. They have smaller beaks. They can't crack that open as easily as, say, our cardinals or our blue jays are much bigger seed eaters who can sit right there in your feeder and just eat the seed, crack it open and eat it right there. So you want some kind of natural cover. You don't want to make sure you don't place your feeder system near a roof line or any kind of large tree with a big branch that hangs over it, because that just invites squirrels to come in and clean out your bird feeders for you.
They're good at that.
Yeah, they're very good at that, and they will clean your bird feeders out really quickly. And so you want to keep it away from something like that. Be aware of where you're doing that. And you want to, if you don't have natural cover, if you can, get some branches together, at least for this first year, and create a small little brush pile near that. It will provide cover for them. But it's also the time to think about, if you like doing this, how can I improve the habitat in my yard? Creating some of this cover in an area where you'd like to feed your birds in the winter with tree plantings or shrub plantings as well. And if you're interested in that, you can go to like Habitat Network, which is powered by the Nature Conservancy and Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and they will kind of give you some good ideas for what kind of plants to plant, how you should locate them. The same for creating a garden for birds, which you can get at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology as well. So yeah, feeder placement's important. The other thing you're going to think about is the feeders. There are a ton of feeders out there to choose from. As you're looking at the Project Feeder Watch site, they're going to list and give you good detailed information about probably, I think there's 8-9 different types of feeders that they're going to detail for you, and look at that and see what kind of birds you do want to attract. Maybe you like a specific type of bird, the larger ones versus the smaller.
So different feeders attract different birds.
Right,
Is that what you're
exactly.
saying?
So yeah, like we've got a hopper system, which is, it's a little bit larger, can accommodate your cardinals and your blue jays, or you have a tube feeding system, a smaller, narrower thing, goldfinch and whatnot, a smaller seed-eating bird. So they'll give you all kind of detailed information about those feeders. You can always check in with Wild Birds Unlimited here in town. Great resource for bird feeding systems and whatnot as well.
Okay, so you mentioned sunflowers. Are there other types of food?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of different types of food to feed birds. And again, this is going to be detailed for you in the Project Feeder Watch on their website in the book if you sign up for it as well. But black oil sunflower seeds, that's a really good standard one. You can get that, Southern States. You can buy them at Kroger's. Easy to get those. But that's a good high protein source of food for your birds. A lot of birds will eat this. You've got your cardinals, chickadees, finches, sparrows, woodpeckers. They all will eat those black oiled sunflower seeds. And then there's a list on there that go on. There's, I think, 7, 8 different types of seed that they'll detail for you. And they also let you know some seeds you want to steer clear of on that as well. Another type of food type beyond the seed is a suet, which is can be peanut butter, it can be rendered fat or whatever that has seed embedded in it. So this is a solid type thing, and these are really good for woodpeckers. You'll notice when you look at your bird feeding systems, there's the Suet Feeders, and so it's like this little cake of seed basically. And so it talks a little bit about that, which ones are good, but those would be great if you want to attract woodpeckers to your backyard.
Okay.
And you mentioned kind of keeping the feeders away from areas where squirrels are. Are there other things that you need to do to kind of have that safe feeding environment for them?
Yeah, you do. You want to definitely think about a safe feeding environment. And the first one is you want to make sure you take care of your bird feeder. You want to clean it out. A lot of times they'll list like every 2 weeks, sometimes not feasible, but keep it clean, because they're getting their food from this bird feeder. So you want to keep it clean. And you want to make sure that if you have cats, that I have cats too, but you want to keep them indoors, because if you have an indoor-outdoor cat and you have a bird feeding system outside, this is a perfect place for them to sit and hunt. So you want to keep your cat inside. You also want to think about window crashes. Many of you have probably seen a bird lying next to a building and there's a window and you can see the puff of the feathers. Since you've set this bird feeding system outside of your house, you want to also be aware of, you've got this, your windows with glass, that can be an unusual reflection. It can actually, for the birds, make it look like, oh, I can continue flying, because they see the reflection of the background and they crash into the window. So you can do things of your own, put streamers on your windows so the bird can clearly tell that is not, it's not something to fly into. You don't want streamers, you want something that's a little nicer, a little more cleaner, neater looking. There are all kinds of products that are sold, like Window Alert, ABC bird tape. You can Google all of those and find this. And these are unusual reflectors that the birds can see as the light hits them, and they can tell that window is not something that they can fly through. Okay. So that's important to think about. And then the last one you might run into are avian predators, other birds that prey on other birds. Cooper's hawk is one that we would have in this area for sure. And if you start noticing that every day you come home and there's another pile of feathers, or you actually see that avian predator, well, remember they have to eat too. But if it's troubling and you kind of want to discourage it, the best thing to do is take your feeders in for 5-6 days. That's going to discourage that the avian predator, maybe that Cooper's hawk, from hanging around your feeders. They will go feed someplace else, and then you can put your feeders back out.
Okay. So for those people that might be interested in this, are there other additional resources that they can go look at?
Yeah, there are. If you're interested in participating in this program, like I said, I had mentioned the Habitat Network. So you're interested in participating. I want to make my yard more habitat friendly. That's a great place to start. It actually helps you map out your yard and will give you some suggestions on what you should put out there. Is a good one. You're interested in birds. There's also Project Nest Watch. Is another program citizen science program you can get involved in. Now that's going to happen more in the spring when birds are nesting and laying eggs. And then there's one that I participate in, is eBird, which that's just anytime you're out looking at birds, you can become citizen science, keeping track of the birds, where you're at, and submit that data as well. And all of those, you can find information about those through the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Many of them are their programs, or they partner with the other agencies for that. I was going to say, for those that might want to do stuff with the younger ones, If you've got kids and whatnot, there's Bird Sleuth, a lot of great activities, a lot of free resources there too. But it's a good site to find some information. And then the Feathered Friends Science Lessons, which you'll find that under Bird Sleuth as well. So if you maybe you're going to teach or thinking about, they even have suggestions on science fair. I know some of us have kids who have to do science fair, and maybe you want to do something with birds. They have suggestions in there as well. All in all, I think Project Feeder Watch is it's a great program. It's a really good citizen science program. It's one that can be used with, like I have kids, and so my children participate in this. So it's from the younger set to the older set. Anybody can participate as long as you can identify and count those birds. The good thing about when they send you the kit, they're going to send you posters that you can hang by where you're doing your counts. And helps you learn your birds as well. So great pictures of the birds that you would commonly see at a feeder as well. But it's a great program. If you're interested, go ahead and get signed up now, because the Project Feeder Watch, the counting starts November 10th, and it goes through all the way through April 5th. You count as often or as little as you like. You're not committed to a certain day. You pick the days you want to count, and sometimes you miss a week, and that's okay. It's only $18 to sign up to get the whole kit. Which is, I think, a pretty inexpensive way to have a family fun,
right.
or to do with a group. You've got a group of friends, you all live together. Let's see what's outside our house. And you'll pick your count site, and they detail you how to do all of this and input that information. And once you've got that all done, then you start counting, get your binoculars out and start counting your birds that are out there.
Well, great. Thank you, Lori, for joining us today. We greatly appreciate all that information. If you'd like more information on what you've heard today on today's segment, or any show for that matter, you can visit our website at fromthewoodsky.org.
All right, thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to From the Woods, Kentucky. If you have any questions about things that you heard on today's show, please visit our website at www.fromthewoodsky.org. Stay tuned each Thursday from 10 to 11 a.m. for another edition of From the Woods, Kentucky.
Hey there. If you're enjoying this podcast from WRFL Lexington, you may enjoy our live radio stream at WRFL.FM and, of course, via radio at 88.1 FM in the central Kentucky area. We have a wide variety of programs you're sure to enjoy. Just go to WRFL.FM/schedule and see what programs appeal most to you. Thanks again for listening to this podcast from WRFL Lexington.